So this may be a bit of a practical side of how we look at doing business in different areas in the solar-powered water pumping, irrigation, and purification sectors. So WorldWater and Solar and now Quench Water and Solar, we've been in business about 30 years. We've been doing business in about 30 countries around the world, and we focus quite a bit throughout the continent of Africa. And this is me. I am the Executive Vice President of WorldWater and Solar Technologies. That's the parent company of Quench Water and Solar. I'm the president of that subsidiary. And spending about 20 years in the renewable energy industry and recently focused on water, and we use solar energy to pump and purify water. We use solar energy to pump water for irrigation, and we do that in a way that no one else is able to do. We do that in very large quantities or very small quantities. So we're doing this, as I mentioned, in many countries around the world, different continents, in the U.S., the Philippines, across the Mideast, North Africa, and throughout all of Africa, and concentrating recently in Africa. And you can see some of those little photos there, those boxes. The one on the bottom right is actually a satellite view of about 1,000 hectares that we've done in the Sahara Desert to turn it green. We've done that a number of years ago. And in the upper left is drip irrigation that we're using solar energy to pump into drip irrigation systems. We have a project that we're working on down in the southern part of Africa right now, using that's sponsored by the government. In the center, that is a farm in California on the West Coast in the U.S., and we are pumping water from about 1,000 feet deep, 1,000 gallons a minute, to irrigate those citrus crops that you see in the top and the bottom from a distance. On the bottom left, there's a picture of rice irrigation, solar powered. And we're working on some projects right now in West Africa that are fantastic, where we have 12,000 acres, about 5,000 hectares of opportunity to use solar energy to pump and irrigate a series of farms. We're doing a pilot project there that the government has as a mandate to produce a crop and increase their crop production, actually more than double it, so that they can avoid having to import those crops. And I'm going to give you a very practical example here in a minute. So a lot of people ask me when we're talking about solar-powered irrigation and the benefits and the value of that and the cost and the economies and so forth, the easiest way to do that is to show you exactly how the numbers work in general terms when we're doing a technical proposal. So we identify the volume of water that's needed and the amount of solar it's going to take to pump that. And we do all the calculations, and we have a patented technology that allows us to control those pumps directly from sunshine, from the solar panels, and create a financial model that makes a whole lot of sense. So you can see here the financial economic benefits of a self-sustaining, what we call ag projects. So for a sample of a crop that would cost about 40 cents US per kilogram, if you were to import 125,000 megatons, a project like that would save $50 million in those costs. It would offset that. The foreign exchange saved in a 15-year period, which is very typical for the length of a project's life, 15 to 20 years, would be in the vicinity of $500 million, about $500 million that we would be saving. We are displacing $50 million at today's cost only, not escalated, but today's cost of solar pumping, diesel pumping, I'm sorry, using the solar. So using solar instead of diesel will save the additional 50, and it's often very common for a government in many of these areas to be charging a little fee, a tax on the crop, on the sale of the crop, and they can generate enough money from that small fee. I use 3% here as an example, that will pay for the entire project. So the numbers make sense to use solar. 250,000 tons of carbon that are offset to do that compared to what's generated by diesel. And the project capacity, as you see there, can increase a typical farm, the smallholder farm's household income to $5,000 a year, and that's about double from what the average may be in these areas that we're talking about. Obviously, that creates jobs. There's operations and maintenance, albeit a whole lot less, a fraction of what's necessary in diesel pumping. And by the way, there's about 31 million acres of land across the continent that's being farmed or irrigated using diesel pumps, to put this in perspective. So the operations and maintenance is low when you're dealing with solar. There isn't anything, no moving parts on the solar side. It's only the pumps and making sure that it's operational. And we've been forging kind of a new path, I'd say, in across the continent in building these water purchase agreements. So instead of the governments or the industries or the companies needing to have a huge outlay of cash in order to take advantage of these savings and all the benefits that I listed some of, they don't need to part with their capital in order to do that. We can establish it as a water purchase agreement where they're paying for the water that we deliver based on our engineering, our technology, and the expertise that we have in doing these systems. And we've been doing them for a long time. And that puts all the risk on us. It takes the risk away from the entities that are interested in benefiting from these crops and the agriculture business when it comes to what we provide. That is WorldWater and Solar Technology. So we focus, again, just to recap briefly, on the solar energy for clean power and the solar irrigation for irrigating large or smallholder farms. And we have mobile products as well that are solar-powered water pumping and purification units.